Next, we'll cover the macromolecules used in living systems for life. There are four major categories of large or macromolecules used by all living systems on Earth. Those four major categories are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Carbohydrates are essentially sugars, lipids are essentially fats, and I'm sure you're familiar with protein. Finally, nucleic acids includes things like DNA and RNA. We'll start with carbohydrates. Carbohydrates is a complex name to describe the molecules known as sugars and starches. The primary function of carbohydrates is that these are molecules used for quick energy. They are the primary molecule used as an energy source by living systems on Earth, and they're also an easy way for cells to store chemical energy for short periods of time. Carbohydrates are essentially carbon that's bound to water, or H2O. A 6-carbon carbohydrate, then, would be C6H12O6. Examples of these are glucose, fructose, and galactose. Each one of these sugars is C6H12O6. The difference between glucose, fructose, and galactose is that glucose and fructose and galactose, even though they all have the same number of atoms, have a different arrangement of those atoms, thus having a different structure. The different structures of these different molecules results in them having different functions. So for instance, your taste buds can readily taste fructose, but cannot readily taste galactose, even though they're all simple sugars. These simple sugars are what are known as saccharides or monosaccharides. Mono meaning one and saccharide meaning sugar. You can take two of these monosaccharides together and form a disaccharide, or two-sugar molecule. Examples of a disaccharide are sucrose, maltose, and lactose. Sucrose, seen in the image here, is what we call simple table sugar. That's what you can get out of table sugar, or honey, or other types of sugar you may use for cooking. Maltose is the sugar used for energy storage by grains, and is also the type of sugar fermented by yeast in the formation of beer. Finally, lactose is the disaccharide used in milk. Carbohydrates can get even more complex and form molecules known as polysaccharides. Poly meaning many and saccharide meaning sugar. Polysaccharides include things like starch, glycogen, and cellulose. Starch, I'm sure you've heard, is a molecule used by plants to store energy. It's also a great energy source for people if we want to participate in a running race or do some aerobic workout that day or the following day. Glycogen is a polysaccharide used to store energy in animal muscle cells. So what your body does is it can take the starch that you consume from pasta or bread and turn that starch into glycogen that your muscle cells can then use when you work out. Cellulose is also a polysaccharide, but cellulose is not used for energy. Cellulose is an unusual polysaccharide in that it forms a cellular structure. Specifically, cellulose forms the cell wall of plant cells. Notably, this is the cell wall and not the cell membrane. The cell wall of cells is used for structural integrity, whereas the cell membrane regulates the molecules that enter and exit cells. Cell membranes are made of fats and we're going to cover this in the next section. Cell walls, on the other hand, are comprised of sugar. And while plant cells and fungal cells and bacterial cells all have cell walls, animal cells do not. Animal cells only have a cell membrane. All cells on Earth have cell membranes, but not all cells on Earth have cell walls. Let's talk about this next category of molecule, the lipids. Lipids are a type of fat. Lipids can include fats or oils. We usually use the term fat to describe a lipid that's solid at room temperature, and the term oil to describe a fat that is liquid at room temperature. The primary function of lipids is used for long-term energy storage. So while sugars or carbohydrates are used as a quick energy source, lipids are a way for cells to store energy for the long term. Lipids are essentially long carbon chains with hydrogens attached to each carbon. You can see these long carbon chains in the image here. There's a lot more energy in each molecule of lipid as compared to each molecule of carbohydrate, which is a reason why our cells primarily like to store energy in the form of lipids. One of the things that you may see from this image here is that lipids can be saturated or unsaturated. They can differ in their length, in the number of carbons in the chain, and also in their level of saturation. Saturated fats, as you can see from the image, have only single covalent bonds between each carbon in the chain. This results in saturated fats being straight molecules. Unsaturated fats, as you can see from the image here, can have at least one double bond between the carbons in the chain. In this case, there are 3 double bonds, making this a polyunsaturated fat. Monounsaturated fats have only 1 double bond in the chain. One of the implications of these double bonds, as you can see here, is that at each location of the double bond, there is a bend or a kink in the carbon chain. This makes unsaturated fats bent or kinked. I like to remember saturated fats with alliteration. In that, the term saturated starts with an S, and this helps remind me that saturated fats have only single covalent bonds, and they are also straight molecules. There is one other feature of saturated fats, also starting with an S, that is not shared with unsaturated fats. Because saturated fats are straight molecules, it is a lot easier for them to pack up right up next to each other, and this makes them solid at room temperature. Unsaturated fats, on the other hand, with their bends or kinks, cannot pack so tightly, and thus at room temperature tend to be liquid. So saturated fats are solid at room temperature, whereas unsaturated fats are liquid at room temperature. These are your oils. Examples of these types of fats are, for saturated fats, the lard or butter or cheese, dairy fats, and fats found in beef and some pork. On the other hand, unsaturated fats, liquid at room temperature, tend to be fats found in plants like olive oil, vegetable oil, nut oils like peanut oil, and also the fats found in fish, like fish oil. One notable exception to this is coconut oil. Coconut oil, while it does come from a plant, is solid at room temperature. And being solid at room temperature, you can tell what kind of fat it is. it's a saturated fat. Let's take a look at the health implications of these different types of fats. Saturated fats, as I mentioned, are able to push up right up next to each other. And as a result, if found in your blood vessels, can stack really close to each other and block or clog your blood vessels. This can lead to an increased risk of heart attack or stroke, problems with cardiovascular disease. This is why cardiovascular experts recommend against consuming a large number of saturated fats. On the other hand, unsaturated fats are liquid and as such move more freely within your bloodstream. This causes them to not block up your blood vessels and in fact allow for more fluidity in your bloodstream. Unsaturated fats are actually a healthy type of fat. And while you should not consume too many fats in your diet, consuming unsaturated fats is actually healthy for your cardiovascular system. These are your fish, nut, and olive oil fats. One fat I haven't mentioned yet is the trans fat. Trans fats, as you can see here, are a unique kind of fat. They are a man-made fat, not found in nature typically. These fats are generated when food processing plants process fats in a way known as partial hydrogenation. If you look at the ingredient list on any food label and you see that there are partially hydrogenated oils, that can guarantee you that there are trans fats in that food product. Partially hydrogenated oils are found regularly in cereal and crackers and cookies. It's also what's found in margarine and Crisco. Trans fats are a type of fat that has a double covalent bond, but because of the orientation of the molecule, as you can see from the picture here, they are straight, like saturated fats. As such, these straight fats can get clogged in your bloodstream, blocking the flow of blood and leading to an increased risk of heart attack or stroke. In addition, because they are foreign types of fats that really only exist because humans make them, your body treats them as foreign objects and tries to attack them using your immune system. This makes them even more unhealthy than the naturally occurring saturated fats. In fact, the FDA is currently investigating to see if they should completely make trans fats illegal and no longer allowed in any processed foods. Until that happens, trans fats will continue to be found in food products. One other type of fat that I haven't mentioned yet, which we may get to later on this semester, are steroids. Steroids, like testosterone and estrogen, are a type of fat, both of which are derived from cholesterol. Cholesterol, I'm sure you know, is a type of fat. It's essentially a type of fat that's been bent over on itself to form 4 concentric rings. Cholesterol is then used and slightly modified to form either testosterone or estrogen. This is one of the reasons why cholesterol is a required part of your cell chemistry. If you don't consume cholesterol, your body makes it for you.